Jason Delgado here with director Hadley Austin. It's nice to have you here. Uh,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thank you. Can you tell us about your movie, Demon Mineral?
Sure. It's a documentary about the legacy of uranium mining on the Navajo Nation, and it's it's focusing on like the intergenerational struggle. It's been a concern and an issue there, something that's impacted water quality there for almost 100 years now. And it's also really celebrating the work of the folks who are spending their lives to create vital living space there in the face of radioactive contamination in their backyards.
Yeah. So how did this issue get on your radar?
Um, like over 20 years ago, I was like a young person, like a young adult in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is a border town to the Navajo Nation and is actually very close to what is today called Pinyon Plain Mine. It's a uranium mine, active uranium mine now. It was reopened last month. Um, but at the time it was called Canyon Mine. I lived right there, sort of like where the issue began. And over my many years living there, made a lot of connections, community connections, in the place where the film is made. I'm not Dene. Everyone who's in the film is Dene, which, I think folks who might be more familiar with the word Navajo. Everyone in the film is Dene except for Secretary of Interior Holland, and I don't share that heritage, but that place is my home. It was a place that I feel very connected to. They're not ancestrally, and not so much spiritually.
Yeah. So what were some of the challenges of making this movie?
Oh, there were so many. I think with any film, I think every film is a challenge. Like every film is a miracle and is like the result of just endless persistence. Um, I think um, obviously, as with all films, there were funding challenges. Like a lot of it was made just with me and my partner Yoni Goldstein, who was the DP. It was just the two of us. I ran sound. He shot it, until we got some funding, but that took several years. And then other challenges we had, were kind of practical, like uranium mines. You don't look at them and go, "Ah, my God, how terrifying!" So like communicating danger, communicating like the reality of the situation in a way that was artful, accurate, impactful. Um, that was something we really had to grapple with. And then lastly, I think it's like a film that's trying to do a lot. It's trying to tell this historical narrative, sort of like explain how we ended up here, but it's also trying to like bring an issue to the fore, to make it comprehensible. But it's a complex issue, not just politically, but also like scientifically. Like, why is this dangerous? We kind of felt beholden to explain that. And so, it's like a science film, and it's an art object, and it's an advocacy piece, and it's really also like something that we tried to allow to be true to itself throughout that whole process.
Yeah. It's a lot, but I think you did a really good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So what was behind the decision to shoot largely in black and white?
Well, that black and white is infrared, black and white. Um, and we did that for a lot of reasons. So one person that we were talking to about this recently called it the film's visual Geiger counter, and I think that's really accurate. We filmed places where the land has been abused in this way in infrared black and white to capture the invisible danger that is radiation with invisible light. Light, well, invisible to the human eye. Like obviously it's visible, like we captured it and you're looking at it, but invisible to the human eye, just as radiation and that danger is invisible to the human eye. We also were, playing with the history of how this place has been presented in film historically. Some of the first uranium mines on the Navajo Nation were opened up in what you might be familiar with, a place called Monument Valley. That's where all those John Wayne Ford Westerns were shot, and everybody talks about the John Wayne curse. You know, they're like, oh, they all died. It's shocking, right? And it's really not. They were filming these films just as these like minds were being opened up and like exposing everyone to like things that aren't really good for the human body. But you know, those Westerns tell a very specific kind of tale. Indigeneity is presented in a very specific kind of way, as something to be conquered, and we really wanted to make an anti-Western, you know, so we were playing with that legacy as well. But some of the film is not in black and white, you know, and that's because, you know, some of the spaces where we were filming were less dangerous. um, you know, the risks were lower there, and so we filmed those places in color.
Yeah. You mentioned funding. I believe I saw you got some funding from the Redford Center. Did you get any feedback from Robert Redford?
No feedback from Robert Redford. You know, if he sees the film, I hope to hear from him. The Redford Center was his brother's project, and I use the past tense just because he's passed. But they were very generous to us, and they've been very good to us. You know, they've helped us create community screenings. You know, they've really sort of stuck with us, and we're really grateful to them. I don't think Demon Mineral would exist without the Redford Center.
Yeah. So what's next for this film? Where can people see it?
So we know for sure that we'll be at Big Sky tomorrow. I get on a plane tomorrow. Yeah, we'll be at Big Sky. We'll be at the Phoenix Film Festival in April. We're also part of the Uranium Film Festival, which is doing like a tour. So we might be coming to a town near you. Um, and then we will be at the Portland Environmental Film Festival. And then there's some others that are just sort of out there. You know, we're waiting to hear back, of course. In terms of the film's life, you know, after festival run, you know, we're still figuring that out, but we have aspirations.
Well, I wish you good luck. But
Thanks.
so what can people, really do about this issue?
Yeah. I think one thing is that you can be very active, vocal, sort of aware, that there are new uranium mines being proposed. There are old uranium mines right now being reopened. The uranium lobby is very powerful right now, and the price of uranium is skyrocketing because of dynamics in the global market. Canada has stopped, for the most part, mining and exporting uranium, and so has Australia. And as a result of this, the places where we can get our uranium at this point are more challenging places. And so as a result of this perceived scarcity, right, the profits to be made by uranium mining in the short term are really skyrocketing. And so there's this huge push to open new mines. And I think we need to collectively all just say, this is not the answer. The long-term costs of this are too great. The cost of cleaning up after a uranium mine is so much greater than any profit that mine will ever make. Additionally, in terms of just what can be done on the Navajo Nation and in other places, this is only one place in North America that we were talking about, but it's a problem all the way up the Rockies. I think we need to not be nihilistic about it. I think that we need to acknowledge that even if we can't just magically return things to the way they were a century ago, the improvements can still be made. We can cover up radon vents. We can encase, tailings piles. We can ensure people have access to clean water. Recently, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government does not have an obligation to ensure that the Navajo Nation has access to clean water. I think we can say something about that, and I think with enough collective, I wouldn't call it outrage. I don't know what good outrage does, but with enough collective just sort of pointing out that this is an irrational approach, improvements can be made.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always hard to fight against money when money's involved. But yeah, we gotta just do what we can. Um, on a lighter note, I enjoyed the bands that were in the movie. Can you talk a little bit about them?
Oh yeah. They're the best. Yeah, and our sound person who captured that sound, Orlando Skidmore, I mean, he did such a great job. We were shooting outdoors. It was windy. These were not ideal circumstances to capture music. But yeah, so there's um, three musical artists in the film, and you see two of them performing. One is a heavy metal band called Testify, and they live out in Theroux, New Mexico, which is an area that has a very contaminated water table. It's a very challenging place in terms of that problem. And I just like, they're such nice guys. I love the guitar. I think they're so talented. They were so fun to shoot with. We shot with them twice. We did once deep pandemic, like masks on, no budget, and then we got some funding and they let us film again. Really grateful for their time. But I thought it was really really important to capture like the res metal cultural element. It's such a pervasive part of life in that part of the world, and it's wonderful. It's like super empowering. It's very fun. The musicians are so talented, but also uranium's a heavy metal, so it was a little bit like, we just had to do it. And I really also I wanted to show that like resistance isn't always like this mournful, like I don't know, like staid process, like resistance is making art, resistance is sometimes like playing heavy metal next to your field of sheep. um, and then another band that you saw there called Sihassan, and many many moons ago when I was really young and I lived in Flagstaff, we ran in the same circles. We had not remained super close, but we were involved, in a lot of the same endeavors. And so I really wanted to include them because they have spent their lives as activists for this cause and other related causes in the area, um, and are just so talented. Back then, they were in a band called Blackfire, and I encourage you to give that a Google and listen. And their brother Clee recently passed, but he was. I've been thinking about him because I don't know that the film would exist if I hadn't met him. All those years ago. I think he was an activist. If you haven't heard of him, again, he might be worth a Google. He was a public figure, very well known in his work. But yeah, I really wanted to capture their art, sort of because of personal reasons, I guess. But they're so wonderfully talented, and they do like a really cool kind of like punk rock meets like chanting mashup thing, which I think is amazing. And we filmed that out in the Painted Desert. I mean, it was epic. And then the credits roll on top of a piece that Lisa Robbins, who is an expert who speaks in the film, we didn't film her performing because she arranges for orchestras, and we could not access an orchestra. But we had her orchestral piece that had been performed at the Grand Canyon Music Festival roll as our credits. And I think the variety of the music is like so important to capture. I think showing that like this place has so much talent in it. It's just a way of not wastelanding it. It's a way of like moving beyond this like maybe intuitive response some people have to say like, well, not that many people live there, and instead to go like, yeah, but like amazing people live there. Like, look at what they're doing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love the music. Yeah, that was great. Do you guys have a website or? Yeah.
Yeah, we have it's a fairly like baby website. It's there's really just like two of us making this thing happen right now. So it's demonmineral.com. We hope to make it bigger and broader soon, but you can definitely find updates there. And I also just on my Instagram sort of, am the PR person for the film. So you can search for Hadley Austin on Instagram.
Nice. Do you have any projects coming up next, or you're just focusing on this right now?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Like I was just saying the other day, I was like, I don't think this film is done with me yet. Um, uh, we are spending a lot of energy, obviously, working with the film. We're working also to get like legislative screenings, places where lawmakers are gathering to make decisions. So that is taking a lot of our focus. But we are certainly working on some other projects we have coming down the line. We're a small group, so I mean, it'll be like, look for this in a few years. but but we're working on making a piece about like how the Patriot Act impacted environmental activism and like the ability to legally dissent in the United States, and how it has had a direct sort of, there's a causal link to the Patriot Act, between the Patriot Act and like the militarization of police. And so just exploring that historical arc. It's funny to think of something that's only like 22 years ago as historical, but I guess it is. Um, but yeah, we're working on that. We're working on some other pieces about living in a body, being embodied in this increasingly digital age. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I think you're doing great work. So keep it up, definitely. And
Thanks.
thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, see you.